Let's talk money.
I don't have your money.
I know I'd be a lot happier with some extra cash.
Is this about money?
Obviously, this is all about money.
Oh, man, we got bills to pay, buddy.
With practical tips and a focus on scripture, let's talk money. With Dave and Reb. From More Than Enough. Real conversations about money for real people. Let's talk money.
Are you ready to talk money, Reb?
I'm ready to talk money. It's very rarely that I'm not ready anymore.
Yeah. And it's a good thing, too, because this is a podcast where
we
Dave and Reb talk about money.
Yes.
And if it's just Dave talking, which I mean, I would be happy to carry the torch sometimes, but that would get a little boring after a while.
I would think so. You would lull everyone to sleep with that voice of yours. Mm-hmm. But I want to say...
Not to mention, the biggest feedback we get from all of you that are listening is, we love Reb! I'm just saying, I love to hear that you love Reb.
And I'm still amazed that we're here after, I think, 7 years. This is the month. We started 7 years ago in November. Right. I don't think it's 8. I'll have to go back now and count because now I'm like, oh no. But I'm pretty sure we've been here 7 years. And for you, the listeners, thank you so much for listening.
100%. I mean, again, I think that's... We'll have to actually figure out what the anniversary date is, and maybe we'll make this the pre-anniversary. We'll figure it out.
No, but November was the kickoff.
So 7 years. Thank you for listening and listening and listening again. And today we have Tim back. We had him on last week, so don't stop and go listen. Just listen now and then go back. Because all of the shows are recorded on Spotify, on YouTube. You know the shtick anyway. So, morethanenough.ca. And I got to mention More Than Enough because we are the sponsors. Reb and I run a company called More Than Enough. It's a financial coaching company, and our whole mission in this world is to bring hope and freedom in the area of finances. And so the podcast is part of that.
Yes.
Having guests on like you, Tim, to say, okay, last week's show brought me a lot of hope and freedom. And I knew this stuff. And I'm thinking, oh man, there's just so much good things around.
If you want to eliminate CRA from your estate, go back and listen. And that's all I'll say.
Yes. So thank you, Reb, for sponsoring today's show.
You're very welcome. And on with the show. So I want to read Matthew 6. They're common verses. They're your favorite verses.
They are my favorite.
If you read my book, we talk about Matthew 6 a bit in the book. I always want to call it ours because I feel like I couldn't have written it without you. So anyway, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. Now, I'm going to say this, just listen again. These are words maybe that you've heard your whole life. So I'm going to just read them, but listen, pay attention to how you're listening. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And I read these verses again because we need the reminder. What were you saying to our coaches lately? Repetition. Mm-hmm. We need the repetition. We need the truth of God repeating itself in our minds and our hearts every day because we're bombarded by a world that says, lay up for yourselves treasures here. Now, it doesn't mean we can't enjoy some really nice things. Sure. There are some really, and the Lord says in 1 Timothy 6, I think, warn those who are rich among you not to trust in riches, but enjoy what you have. And that's a really good balance or thought to have. But remember where we're investing our time. So in this discussion this week with Tim, could you just give us a quick recap of where you're from if people missed last week's show?
Sure. Yeah. I lead a team at Trinity Family Wealth Advisors. We serve clients throughout Canada and into the States as well. The 5 areas that we work with would be estate and financial planning, investment management. We do business succession work, and we help clients look at generosity and how that can impact their families, how that can impact the things that are really important to them, and how they can use it to actually foster relationships with their family. So we're a holistic approach, and we work with high net worth families.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, because you have a big passion for generosity.
Totally.
I don't know you super well, but of my experience with you, I'm like, well, Tim really loves generosity and giving, and it's what you do.
Sure.
It's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
So we're talking today about that, about now that as we're getting to the end of 2023, we can really, we've said this before on the podcast, because I remember having Steve Rolston here talking about how can we plan at the end of the year for next year's giving. And that was one of the first discussions we had on that idea. So we're going to dig in a little bit to year-end generosity. And you have a couple of themes that you've written about on your website, which I'll also link to in the show notes today. So
yeah, totally. So Steve's a great friend of mine. We've been on a journey of generosity for a lot of years, and kind of iron sharpens iron. So we'll talk the very same language and have the same approach. So so this is a beautiful time where we have the opportunity to do some planning that will affect our taxes. Now, we may or may not be motivated by the tax. Probably we want to save tax if we can. But the other side may be our heart issue, where we are just feeling that we are in a position to be more generous, or could we be more generous this year? Mm-hmm. So if I want to be, well, let's be smart about how I do that. And if I can reduce some taxes and get a bigger tax return real soon in a few months, then let's do it now. So we have to do our giving before the end of the year. That's really, our whole tax system is based on a calendar year. So we've got, a few weeks left to do some planning. So opportune time to be starting to think about this if we haven't already. So let's look at a couple different examples where people may be in a situation where they're just saying, yeah, this might be the year where I want to do more than I have in the past. So maybe people have got a bonus. Oftentimes bonuses may come in towards year end, or they've already got it. So we weren't sure what we were getting. We were giving based on not getting a bonus or whatever. But we're in a situation where we actually have capital in our hands before year end that we could be generous with. So I always like to say to folks, here's a question I love. And the question is, Father, Heavenly Father, what do you want me to do with this money? So as you said, Reb, sometimes our Heavenly Father gives us money so that we can enjoy it, or we can be generous to our family. I think it's really important. We want to be generous with ministries and our local church and people that need those resources. But I don't want to bypass my kids and my family in that generosity too. So there's that balance, right? Yes. So that's where I have to go to my Heavenly Father and say, okay, we got extra. Why did you give that to me? Is it for the plate on Sunday morning, or is it something that's happening in my family, or just for the fact that, you know what, we've been going really hard for the last 6 months. Oh, I got the sense that you want me and my wife to go away for the weekend and enjoy life and each other. Maybe that's why he gave it. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not always this. I like people to say, no, this is a conversation I need to have. So have the conversation and Heavenly Father, what is it you want us to do? So we may have extra from some kind of windfall this year. Here's another one for folks that are retired. It's not uncommon for us to see where they've converted their RSPs to a RIF, and the RIF says you got to take a certain amount of money out of your investments, whether you need it or not. Right. So sometime we're towards the end of the year, and that client's going, the government made me take this out. I got to pay tax on it, but our bank account keeps getting bigger because we're not spending what we have to withdraw. So I look at that and go, well, perfect time. I got to pay tax on that money. But if I were to give some of that to my favorite charities before year end, I'm reducing or potentially eliminating my tax liability on that. So those would be two examples. Another real quick one. When you're working with your investment advisor, you may have assets that are exposed to tax, which would be our open account or an investment account. It's not a registered account. And those different securities appreciate in value. I have two choices. I can sell it and then give some money away. But it's a better approach to actually give the security away to the charity, let them sell it. I won't go into the details about that. You can talk to your investment advisor about that. But if you've got appreciated assets, giving those to charity between now and the end of the year can have some good tax benefits, but also a lot of, hey, I'm doing what I feel called to do. And
the gift that keeps giving.
Well, and what I'm hearing from you, Tim, is the very practical part, like to reduce your tax liability, but it's so connected with the heart. Like, and you can't separate. Well, you could separate the two, I guess. You could just say, I don't want to give to CRA, so I'll give and not have a heart motivation. But it is very important. I'm thinking of that verse that we often quote from 2 Corinthians, I think it is in chapter 9, God loves a cheerful giver. It's in the midst of, determine in your heart what you will give. Mm-hmm. And that is such a precious verse to me because it's what you've been saying. Heavenly Father, what do you want me to do with what I have? And sometimes we talk about it because some listeners, they might be listening and thinking, well, I don't have a lot of excess at the end of this year. But we often say you have time, you have expertise, you have some cash, more than you think you do, right? It's a mind shift that there is some places where you can give, even if it's in smaller amounts. It doesn't have to be big numbers because God knows your heart and you determine in your heart what you will give. And and just to put context to some of it, because it relates to all of our life giving. It relates to all of our life and then determining it and then trying to do it cheerfully. I can't say sometimes that I have felt cheerful in giving. Dave has taught me over the years and my family, lots of people around me have taught me how to be hospitable. And, people will say, well, you have the gift of hospitality. And I'm saying, actually, I would never say I have that. I think I've learned it. And we can learn to be givers. You might think, oh, I'm not very generous, but maybe you're giving your time exponentially to your grandchildren because you're on a limited income. And that's a precious gift of giving. And I think at the year end now, as people think about the year ahead, we can think of all of those things we have in our hand. What you've described, if you have extra, or if you don't have what you think is extra, there's a lot of things we hold in our hand that we can give in the year ahead. Time and do you know?
Oh, totally. And it just reminds me of a blog one of our team members wrote for year end a year ago in terms of giving, because typically we think money. And she had this great concept saying, hey, Tim, let's talk about much more than money. And so trinityfamilywealth.ca, look under the blogs, and I forget the title of it, but it's very much on that. And she gave some great examples that we normally don't think about for year-end generosity, and it wasn't a matter of writing a check.
And I want to kind of go back to where we started with Matthew 6 and Reb, you ended on verse 21. And if you're like, I don't know where to give, I don't know how to do that, Scripture says where your treasure is, there your heart will be as well. And I often go, just check your heart. Right? Like, check your heart and say, what gets me emotional? What touches my heart? And if you're like, I don't know where to give, or I don't know where to start, check there and say, okay, so maybe, again, there's so many things that you can go, oh yeah, I get emotional when I think about a homeless person, somebody who doesn't have shelter in this winter season. And you can go, okay, so there are thousands of places to give that deal with homelessness. Let's go find one, right? So an example. So the starting point, just as we were talking about Matthew 6, was just check your heart to where your heart is actually going to be joyful and cheerful to give to, because it's already in there. Sure. And God's put that seed there. And sometimes what I see in the coaching we do is that people all of a sudden go, yeah, it was effortless.
Wow.
To give.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, of course it was, because God's planted that seed and you just hadn't nurtured
amazing.
it. And then, I was such a joy to give to that.
Do you have any stories where you've seen clients get like really jived about some of the things?
Completely. Yeah. And so I'm going to answer that real quick, and I'm going to bring us back to one other thing here. But yeah, we actually do 2 financial plans for our clients. So the first financial plan answers the question, how much is enough? Really important question. And really, what's our finish line? Then what we say is in our market, there will be already excess. They've passed their finish line, or they're on track. They may not have passed it, but we know if they continue the way they are, they will pass it. So then what we do is we run an abundant living plan. And that says, how much more can we give and not impact kind of our future? And that's typically, it's surprising how much more we often can give and still hit our own target. And so they get super excited about that, because now what we've done is we've given them permission to do what their heart wants to do, but their head says we can't do it yet. And then all of a sudden it's like, we can do it. We're just setting them on fire.
Oh, I just get so excited to hear stories like that. And because maybe listeners aren't exposed to the stories about the giving that happens, there is an incredible amount of giving. Statistically, Stats Canada says that Canadians give less than 1% in charitable giving. That's recorded. But then when I talk to some financial planners, especially those connected to the kingdom of God, there are some amazing people doing some amazing generous giving that, and it's quietly done, or, and that's, it doesn't have to be, but I guess it's an encouragement to my heart to know that's the field you're in and you're seeing it happen. And
God's blessed people for that reason. And they understand it. They get it. They get that we're called, and we're equipped to be able to have margin, and the margin is not for us. The margin is to fulfill God's purposes. So I just want to cycle back. We had talked about that those individuals that for some reason have extra this year they could give before year end. Here's another scenario where a client or an individual has actually established their finish line. How much is enough? Like, what is our finish line? When we build a pile, at what point do we not need any more for ourselves? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, how much is enough for the kids? And that's a really important question, because we want to give enough to bless, but there's a tipping point. We give more, better. All of a sudden, we've changed their future, and it's not positive. It becomes a curse. So I'm not going to go into that. We wrote a blog on that. Both of those, you can check out the website. How much is enough for us, or how much is enough? And the second is, how much is enough for our kids? I think it addresses it really well. Let's just say you've answered the question. You know where you are on the finish line, and you're beyond it. So now what we look at is, at what point do we give some of our resources away? The last show we talked about, hey, if you die without a really good plan in place, CRA is going to get way more money than you want them to. So what we can do now is start to whittle away at that big pile and be giving it away each year. That reduces my annual tax each year. It also reduces my end of life tax. And some clients go, the kids can deal with that. My estate can clean all that up. But I go, when I think through that, I just look at it and say, if we're doing that, here's the types of things that are happening. We're actually the steward of the resources we've given, not my kids. They'll be the steward of some of the resources that I may pass to them as choosing them as the next steward on some of our assets. But I'm the steward of our assets with my spouse. So I'm making management decisions, leadership decisions, stewardship decisions on those assets. We get to choose where that goes based on my passion, Dave, just like you've talked about here, right? What we get passionate about. But here's some of the benefits. We get the joy of generosity. We get the joy of seeing that investment made and the return made. And maybe we get a thanks, but even if we don't, we say, that was a great use of our dollars, or and we're able to
see it. So we're not just waiting for our passing.
I think that's the intangible, though, right?
Yeah.
In the sense of saying, yes, we talked last show about all that end of life and estate planning, but you're not there, right? So there's a legacy part, which is great. But what we're talking about here is you are saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to put trust in money. I'm going to trust God with the future and all of that. But I've done my work and my planning, and I've worked, and I've got good counsel, and we've decided how much is enough. And so we're there. But then I get this, in a sense, joy of redistributing the wealth of the kingdom into the places where God leads me. It reminds me of a story. I want to segue. I think it was Randy Alcorn in one of his books. I think it was The Treasure Principle. Just talks about this gentleman in the States, kind of in the 50s. He had a very successful business, which they transitioned to the next generation. And the story, in a sense, goes like this, that he was still receiving significant dividends and significant money coming in. And Randy makes the point, he lived in a kind of a middle class, with a Chevy Caprice as a car, right? So like middle class. You would
remember
right?
the kind of car.
Of course. Randy paints this picture where, his whole life, he didn't go into the excesses that he could have because of the wealth that was being generated through his business. But his sole job in retirement, all of this money would get transferred into his account, and then he would redistribute it. And he would stop when his son would come and say, Dad, the account's empty. Okay, well, I guess God's got to fill that back up. And then he would just stop and it would fill back up, and then it'd be like, okay, let's get at it again. And the thing I remember about the story is that I think it was 3 years running, he himself was the single biggest donor to the country of Bangladesh.
Wow.
Okay, so we're talking a lot of money flowing out, and I'm sure he did a lot of other things. But the reality was I had this picture, and maybe Randy painted that picture, this picture of him sitting in his rocking chair in a, kind of middle class kind of home that we all would live in. He wouldn't have his computer in front of him, but he would have his Bible on his lap. And he would just be asking the Lord, so Lord,
wow,
how do we redistribute this?
Wow.
What are we going to do to bring your kingdom practically to the world around us? And then an idea pops into his head. Oh, let's give some money to Bangladesh, right? Anyways, I'll end with the story.
So we started off talking about generosity at some point in this conversation. And so I think what this shows is the generosity in the heart of God, because he's saying, I'm the one in charge of giving these resources to you. And as you share them, I'm actually going to let you have or give you joy and let you see the impact of that. I'm going to be generous back in a significant way. So that's really cool. So then back to that person that knows they're beyond the finish line. This is the time of year to say, are we going to increase our generosity, reduce the pile a little bit that would be taxable end of life, and all these other implications. So now with that though, regardless of where we're at, we've talked about people that have excess. What I learn about generosity is that generosity is something that can impact a family and can impact generations. And so when we work with our family, our client families, as parents, we want our values transferred to our kids more than any other transfer. We want to bless them with financial assets if we can do that. But more important is our values. So we can use our giving as a way to really enhance our family relationships. So if you are going to be giving, then what we look at is one idea would be to give through our grandkids or our kids. We just set aside some money and we actually talk to them and say, you know what, Grandpa and Grandma or Mom and Dad, at Christmas, you never know what to get us. We have probably all the things, and I don't need another tie or new socks. So what we're looking at is we're going to give you X dollars, and between now and Christmas, what we want you to do is just decide where that should be given. You're not keeping the X dollars. You're going to put it somewhere.
So you're saying, like, as a grandparent, I would look at my grandchild and say, I have $500 I'm going to give you, and you're going to decide who to give it to before the end of the year.
Exactly. Okay. And so at Christmas time, here's what I want. I want you to tell me, or you want me to just write a little note, Grandpa, here's what I decided and where. Now, if you can do this like at Christmas around the Christmas table or something, this is a rich conversation, right? right? This is probably the highlight of everybody's Christmas. But you don't have to. You know your family, you know your kids and grandkids, all that. But yeah, you do that, and it's a wonderful exercise. Now, here's what's happening: is generosity is caught. And the interesting thing is that we'll use your example, Reb, that $500, whether my grandchild or my child gives that $500 and it was my money or it was their money, the end result is the same.
Wow.
They catch generosity. So I'm being generous through them. I get a double win here. I'm passing my value. We're impacting wherever they make a choice. So that's a really interesting thing. That child or grandchild goes, I did this. I made this difference in this person or this charity or whatever. Well, it was actually grandpa and grandma's money or mom and dad's, but for the kid, no difference. And so here's what's happening. Often people are kind of struggling to, where do I connect with my grandchild? I don't see them that much. We're different generations, or my kids or something like that. Generosity is a unifier. That's just one exercise. We got a whole bunch on our website. There's a blog called, I think, 9 ways to something about giving with our grandkids. And it's all age appropriate, gives us all kinds of stuff. Okay. So really what we're looking at there is using generosity to transfer our values. And just one other kind of closing thought on this is, we work with a lot of really generous people, right? And the general population needs to be aware of, you may just see people that have, they've been blessed. They've worked super hard typically to end up with the financial means, but a lot of those folks are really carrying a lot of ministries, and a lot of national ministries or local ministries or charities rely on them. They're doing some amazing things, and they're doing it really quietly, perhaps. So I want to mention that. And the other thought is, as we work with those folks, I've never seen anybody ever go backwards on the generosity scale. They always go forward on it, meaning year after year, they give more or they give the same. They never reduce it. And it's just an interesting insight from our perspective to see that. There's something about generosity that the more we give, the more we want to give.
Well, even on this scale that we talk about in coaching, when people start, let's say they haven't had it as a practice in their life and they start, they don't usually go back either. It is, they just say, I want to get my finances in better shape so I can give more. And when we hear that, that's exciting for us to hear. So.
Okay, well, we got to wrap it up, and there is so much more. My brain is like, we're going to let Tim talk but I'm sure Reb and I are going to visit this show with or without you, Tim, in the sense of saying there's so much more. I really like that idea.
I think we should do that for our kids. Give them each some money to give away.
And my last little comment, because I love that idea. And the reality is our kids are not going to think about their generosity from a tax return perspective. They're going to come from their heart. They're going to say, I want to give to this, Grandma, because it's important to me. And it does give you insight into what's going on into the heart of your child or your grandchild. And we got to end on that bombshell, as we so often hear on other shows. So thank you so much, Tim, for being with us.
Are you going to pray?
I am going to pray quickly. Thank you, Lord, for being in this conversation and leading us and guiding us in the way that you want to redistribute the wealth that we have for your kingdom purposes here on earth as it is in heaven. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us for 7 years, and continue to join us as we talk money next week.
Let's Talk Money is a division of More Than Enough Financial Fitness, where God is transforming hearts and bringing hope for today and freedom for tomorrow. For more information or to comment on today's show, please visit morethanenough.ca.